The box arrived without a name, without an origin, humming with a frequency only those who dare listen can hear. GnomeJam! A simple challenge: make a game in 10 days. There was just one rule. You must use the assets that the box provided. But it's not the contents of the box that are dangerous. It's what it awakens in you when you unlock it. Hello, my fellow gnomes. Welcome back to the channel. Last month, we ran yet another of our GnomeJam development contests, and wow, did we get some incredible games. Today, we're going to be taking a look through some of the games you guys submitted, some of which are playing in the background right now. Now, sadly, I don't have time to run through every game in this video, but it really goes without saying, you've blown me away with your creations. It's really cool to see a lot of returning names coming to these jams, with the same people submitting new games year on year, and then seeing massive leaps and bounds in progression between those games. So it may be a cliche, but the standard is definitely getting higher each year. We'll have a look at some of the prize winners in a moment, but first I just want to say a massive well done to everyone who entered. GnomeJams aren't really just about winning the prize money, it's about challenging yourself to make a game and in a limited time span and within a limited constraint. Just to be able to submit a game at all, even if it's unfinished, broken, and not what you planned, it's still a really worthy accomplishment to get something off the ground at all. Now, there's always a few games that don't quite hit the mark in certain places or have a few bugs, but you can see some real passion has been put into their development, and there's often some pretty cool ideas behind them. So if you've made something during this jam, absolutely feel free to expand on whatever idea you've worked on here, and maybe you could turn it into something even more awesome. But without further ado, let's look through some of my favorites from this year's contest. This is Stranded by Rexiok and a whole bunch of other people who are down in the credits. And this is a fantastic example of the pure quality that is in this GnomeJam. Amazing environment art with all the VFX and the sounds, and being in first person especially, it really brings it together into this immersive experience. And I think if you showed a lot of people this, they probably wouldn't even realize this was built in Roblox at first. Probably my favorite part of this game though is all of the voice acting they've done, which must have taken quite a bit of time to work out and get into the game, but it really adds that extra level of quality. Fantastic game. My harshest criticism here though is maybe a little bit more hand-holding would have been appreciated. Sometimes I wasn't really sure where to go or what to do, and I didn't end up actually finishing the whole game for that reason, but nonetheless an amazing effort on this game. Congratulations to the team on this one. Next up we have Lead a Gnome Army from Quackity Wackity. So in this game, you control all these little minion gnomes and you guide them around into battle, attacking all the NPCs. It's sometimes a little bit tricky to actually select all of them and control them how you want, but it's pretty fun seeing them all run around and do your bidding. The low poly art style works really well here. It really reminds me of a lot of sort of classic real-time strategy games I used to play a lot, so I like this one a lot. However, by far my favorite has to be the simply titled Untitled GnomeJam game. Now, at first glance, this is very simple, and it is quite a simple game. There's no complex mechanics that show here, but I think it absolutely epitomizes the creativity of what this jam is supposed to be about. So people got two assets to work with, and the game says, well, here are the two assets. What on earth am I going to do with these? And they craft this pretty silly, nonsensical story, but it's pretty funny and it works. It's quite engaging. And it's a little bit like Stanley Parable. You've got a voiceover audio narration throughout the whole game as you complete various quests and you're guided through the story. And there's even multiple endings too. So I'm not going to give too much away here, but definitely go and check this one out. All the links to the games will be in the description. So a big fan of this game. You're not going to see a game more focused on using those assets and revolving the game around it than this one. So a deserved winner of 10,000 Robux, our first runner-up. Next up, we're going to take a look at some boss fights, always a popular theme for GnomeJams. The first of these is Flute Fury. I think it's sort of a follow-on to their previous GnomeJam game, and we play as a beach ball, and then we have to attack the enemies with, obviously, a flute. I think this introduces some really interesting movesets as you kind of thinking about your momentum as you move. And I think the boss fights themselves are pretty cool here. They've got 3 of them in the game in total, and all of them are pretty fun and unique. Really great job on this one. I enjoyed playing through it. Now, some people might have been disappointed to roll a bed for their game, but not Sparkly Blue Hat. He's made this game Gnome to Sleep. Some really cool UI here. Love the menu, and very simplistic in-game UI too, which is cool. It's not too overcluttered. But he's made the game about fighting a giant bed. Okay, it could have been a boring game, but no, he took that asset and he made his own thing with it. I love to see that, and that was really the challenge of this jam, is being given an asset and then just seeing where you could go with it. Could you have a creative take on it? And having a fighting bed boss fight, that's definitely it. Probably the most visually impressive boss fight though is the Eye of Demise by that one GamerLad98. He's just taken the Illuminati image, it's flying in the sky, and he's giving you these laser weapons to fight with. You can actually team up with up to 4 players this one, but I just played it single player. If I'm going to give a harsh criticism, it's that it takes a long time to kill the boss and it can be a little bit repetitive. But in terms of the look of this boss fight, I thought it looked fantastic. And like I was saying earlier, it's great to see a returning name like GamerLad come back and give probably his best game yet. However, my favourite fighting game probably came from Mike the Wolf 1399 with Ultra Gnome. Now, in many ways, this might look like a pretty simple game, and in some ways it is. The environments are all in the classic style, and so are all the characters too, but this was really fun to play. Now, a problem I see a lot of games have is the enemies, they all just come from the same spot and they charge towards you, and you just sort of pick them off one by one, but not here. You've got the enemies all scattered around the place. It's a little bit like Doom, the gameplay here, and it keeps you pretty engaged with the different enemy types. Like, for example, here I'm going over the bridge and I'm trying to take out these guys, but then suddenly behind me these flying clock monsters appear and attack me from behind. I found this really fun to play. It is a hard game, but very engaging. And I'm actually going to award this another runner-up prize. Congratulations, here is your 10,000 Robux. Next up, we venture into the world of horror, a popular theme on the channel, and we have this game Skyscraper Smiles, which brands itself as this rather cutesy, whimsical little adventure game. But let me tell you, the smiles do not last long. As soon as you get into the game, the skyscraper changes dramatically, and it's a horror game where you've got to make your way through the office buildings, gather the keys, and eventually even dodge the monster. Now, I thought it did the lighting really well here. It is dark and it makes it spooky, but it's not too dark. And with the torch, it's pretty creepy wandering around with all these doors. You never quite know what you're going to bump into. Next, we have Five Nights at Gnomes from Keefy438. Now, there was a few FNAF-inspired games, but this one probably just pinched the crown for the best among them. I thought this was a pretty faithful recreation of the original FNAF, but with a Roblox twist in that classic Roblox happy home in Robloxia, and with gnomes attacking. This did play really well, but I would have liked to have seen a bit more use of the England image asset that they were given as part of their role, but having it in the background felt like a bit of an afterthought. Up next, we have another game, this time from Werewolf. Of course, it's a horror game. Of course, it's procedurally generated. This is In the Shadow. Now, he likes making these types of games, and I think he's delivered yet again here. We've got these very creepy looking eyes staring down at us from the sky, and we've got to dodge their sort of rays where they're looking and make our way around the map gathering some resources. Now, I did sometimes feel that the gameplay felt a little bit stale, but in terms of the actual environment, they put a lot of work in, and I think if they had more time, he'd probably be able to flesh out the gameplay a little bit more. This is No Man's Land by Frostblade Games. Arguably, this is one of the best looking environments in this entire jam, or of any of the jams we've done. I really love the work they've done on this. It's some sort of futuristic industrial science facility, who knows, but it looks very creepy and it sets the scene perfectly. Again, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more gameplay, as once you've seen the monster, he's fairly easy to dodge and you're essentially just walking around collecting the keycards. But a lot of effort has gone into this one, and a fantastic little GnomeJam entry. However, my favourite horror game is The Skibiddies Among Us by Koogie01, a veteran of the GnomeJam space. Now, many people would have complained at getting the Skibidi toilet, saying they couldn't possibly make a game around this asset. But Kugi has done it anyway. He's used the toilet, a man in a toilet, and he's made a really scary game out of it. You've got to make your way around the map, turning on all these electric breaker boxes. It is a bit like Among Us, as the name suggests, but with a much more tense horror experience. I really like these lockable gates they've got that sort of segregates the area. And then you've got these little cracks that the Skibidi can crawl through, so you never quite know where it can come from, and you've got to watch your back. Really enjoyed playing this one. Really recommend everyone check it out. And it's certainly a deserved runner-up winner. The best horror game, in my opinion. And 10,000 Robux, well deserved. Next up with something a little bit more lighthearted, we have Breadery by LolcatF. Now, they say they developed the whole thing in just 103 hours. And let me tell you, there's an incredible amount of content in here. We've got a whole bakery aspect to the gameplay, and then we also deliver the bread as well. Sort of like a work in a pizza place kind of vibe. Really like what they've done with this game, and a great little creation. On a perhaps somewhat similar vibe about running a food business, we have this game titled Double Shift, where it starts off like a pretty typical simulator game about running a sandwich business. My critique would be that it's a little bit slow to do everything, which makes the gameplay slightly monotonous, but the story really brings it together because at night time, you then find yourself serving a night customer of skeletons. Pretty fun. I thought it was a pretty unique and original idea, and the story really kept me engrossed in the gameplay of wondering what was going to happen to this guy doing this strange night shift, even if the actual game wasn't really going anywhere. Talking of stories though, we have this linear, retro-styled, story-driven game from Fruiaco called Fisherman's Nightmare. This has some of the best cutscenes I have maybe seen in any Roblox game. They look really smooth, and honestly, they look like they've come out of some YouTube animation. I'm really impressed that this is all happening inside of the Roblox engine. It looks really cool. There's a lot of funny little interactions in the game, though I did find the actual fishing part surprisingly hard. Talking about hard, let's talk about puzzle and strategy games. Now, you perhaps wouldn't expect much from a game entitled Skibidi Toilet Escape, but this game from Canada Ball was actually fantastic. In terms of complex gameplay mechanics, it doesn't offer that much, but what it really does offer well is a majestically crafted puzzle. It's a bit like an escape room. You've got everything you need, you're locked inside this burger joint, and you've got to scour the room for clues. There are hints everywhere on the posters throughout the level. Now, we played it on a Discord stream. It probably took us the best part of an hour to complete the whole game, but it was really fun teasing out all of those clues and doing it together. Really satisfying. A true puzzle game. Really enjoyed this one, and shows that you can do a lot with a good game design, even if you're not the best programmer or environment artist. From breaking out to breaking in, and we have this game Clockwork. Now, I put this with the strategy games, but really it's more of sort of a stealth game. And we've got this interesting mechanic of hacking clocks. Don't know, don't ask. But then you can stop time in order to speed past the NPCs. So this is a pretty cool idea. And some of the environment work here looks amazing. I mean, just check out the reflections on some of these rooms. Another thing I really liked is they took the time to make a little interactive tutorial to teach you some of the game's mechanics, rather than just forcing you to read a whole wall of text, or not teach you at all. I had a lot of fun with this one, and I could definitely see it being expanded on into more of a full-fledged game. Now, this is Order and Voltage, a very interesting strategy game. It's sort of like a classic tabletop experience, where you have to guide your units around the map. Now, it's an interesting mechanic because each unit you recruit costs electricity, and if you have the voltage, it goes too high, then game over. So you've got to control your electricity supply, and it's turn-based, so you've got to think very carefully about where you're going and which units you're moving where. To be honest, I didn't have quite enough time to get to grips with this whole thing. It's almost a little bit like chess. I think there's quite a lot of depth here. Very intriguing little game, and I'd quite like to revisit this one and play through it a little more. A real highlight among the puzzle games for me, though, was Stage Play by Manny20453. Now this was a really cool little creation. So you play as this slightly creepy little puppet and you walk about with the goal of supposedly repairing these various cars to help your friend. But the whole game has got this very creepy undertones throughout. Now I think what I like most about this game is it wasn't trying to reach too much to create some grand game experience and then sort of falling short because, you know, it is just a GnomeJam and they don't have much time. This feels like a very well-crafted, well-contained experience. It's just a perfect little sort of mini adventure. Fantastic little indie game. Really enjoyed the whole feeling of playing this one and quite satisfying to finish too. This guy's got a bunch of other interesting games as well, so recommend checking them out if you like this kind of thing. And I've decided to award another one of my 10,000 Robux prizes to this one, so another runner-up, congratulations. But before moving on from the strategy games, I have to mention Classic Crash by the Fake Nitro. So this is a really cool game where you build your own vehicle and then have it navigate the course. You've got these various building blocks, you've got wood, metal, batteries and rockets and of course wheels, and sometimes you've got to batter through obstacles, other times you've got to jump over them. It's inspired by another game on Roblox called War Engines, and I think this is a really cool recreation. I did find it a bit of a shame that my vehicle configuration was lost each time I died, but other than that, really enjoyed this game. And I'm going to have to award yet another 10,000 Robux runner-up prize. Congratulations. And of course, it wouldn't be a GnomeJam or a GnomeCode video without something tower defense related. Now this game is actually a follow-on from their previous game. It's Beware the Cabbage Goblins 2, so it's pretty cool to have a GnomeJam sequel. Now I kind of thought of this game as like a love letter to my original tower defense game and tutorial, a sort of imaginary sequel to my game as well as to theirs. They've taken a lot of the mobs that I use from my tower defense game and made them far cooler than I ever could have. There's some really cool little animations in here. I really like how there's different skill and promotion trees for all of the troops, and loads of Easter eggs with the monster, them coming from throughout GnomeCode and GnomeJam lore. Really nice little game, and for me personally, I could get a lot of the references, and I really found this one quite special. Another wave defense now, and this is Arachnid Infestation. You need 3 players for this one. It is a multiplayer experience, and I like that it does feel very cooperative. It's PvE, and you really feel like you're standing alongside your brothers as you fight off these slightly horrendous hordes of spiders. They move pretty creepily around, and you have to build these fences each wave to sort of hold them back, but of course it never works. This one was pretty enjoyable to play on stream. My favourite wave defense though is Fall into Dusk. So it takes place on a farm, and we have this little grain silo, and you use that to sort of to regenerate your own health, respawn, and also you have to defend it from these hordes of enemies. They've even kept the farm theme going with agricultural themed weapons, so you have this rope sickle thing that actually looks amazing with the animations. You swing it around and attack the enemies. Really like how this game looks and feels to play, very satisfying doing the attacking. Shows you what difference some quality FX can make. You can play this solo or as a team, and you've got various unique classes, enemies, and even a boss battle. So this definitely has to take the crown for the best tower defense game of the jam, and I'm going to award that another 10,000 Robux runner-up prize. Congratulations. Moving on now, and let's talk about platformers, because we had some great ones submitted. Now this is Amphibrian. I really have to try hard not to say amphibian or amphibrain, but it's Amphibrian, and you play as this little frog, and you got this pretty cool physics-based environment where you've got a sort of grapple. I'm not sure why frogs have grapples, but they do, and you sort of navigate around the map. I really like the cartoony look of this one. I have to say I felt like the assets felt a little bit irrelevant in terms of the actual gameplay, but there was a fun little story to it, and it was a very neat little game. A really fun multiplayer platformer is Frozen Party by vParku. Now this took me a minute to even understand what the game was, but essentially each round you can get a block, which you then place on the map, which helps or hinders you sometimes, and the aim is to be the first one to the end of the level. It takes you several rounds to place various blocks, but hopefully you sort of get somewhere by the end. and this really warmed on me as we played. I was really impressed with all the content here. There's different game modes, and there's a bunch of settings you can configure, which for a multiplayer game can take quite a lot of time to do. So really impressive to have made this for a GnomeJam, and I'd really love to see you take this further and try and fashion this into another fully fledged game. My next platformer I want to highlight is Fish Out of Water. Now, there was actually 2 games that did this, but I thought this was my favourite of the 2 by Terrazane YT. Now, this game is basically the inverse of the classic underwater platformer. So here you play as a fish, and you can only stay out of the water for so long before you have to find a water source and then regenerate your breath, or whatever it would be as a fish, to then continue to the next part. Quite challenging, and I really like how they made the levels look. They had the medieval England crest image, so they made the whole level as sort of like an English castle. And I always loved that trope of being a small player in a really big room. I thought this was a lot of fun, even though admittedly I did fail to finish the game. And there we have it, what a jam. These are always such a huge effort to run. We've had over 300 games submitted, and that takes a long time to go through them all. A massive thanks to some of the Discord server moderators who've helped me along the way. Looking at you guys, Chris, Danny, Benry and Werewolf for helping me sort through some of the submissions. I personally have played pretty much every single game and have amassed almost 20 hours of recorded gameplay footage. I could only showcase 26 awesome ones here, but I want you to know that I think you're all awesome, and there were some really great games here, so well done everyone. Now, we've had our 6 runner-up prize winners, but we're not done yet, because that just leaves one more game to announce. Who will take home 100,000 Robux? Who will be the winner of the 2024 Summer GnomeJam? The winner is Tomato with their amazing platformer game Excite Tyke. So imagine if you took Mario 64 and combined it with Mario Kart, and I think this game is pretty much what you get. I absolutely adore so much about this, whether it's the world design, the goofy little character, or how it's perfectly integrated the little car asset into this whole wonderful platformer world. I actually wish I could share the music from this because it gives such a whole upbeat feel to the whole thing, but I'd probably get copyright struck, so you'll have to imagine it. I think what makes this game really interesting is it is a platformer, but because you're driving a car, there's obviously no jump ability. And I don't think I've actually ever played a 3D platformer without being able to jump before, which makes things pretty interesting. Instead, you have to rely on speed boosts and jumping mushrooms and zip wires and all the good platformer stuff. There's 3 levels to drift your way around. We've got the sort of world one with sort of grassy mushroom area. We've got a city landscape and a snowy level 2. All of them have their own feel, and there's 3 hidden loaves of bread to find in each level, so it gives it a bit of replayability. And you've got a timer as well for speed running too. So I feel like you could play a lot of time in this game. It's a lot of fun. I love a retro platformer like this. I'm really impressed with what they've managed to get done during this jam. I think it's a great accomplishment with all the content they've packed in here. Fantastic work to Tomato, and really a well-deserved winner. If you want to play the game, the link will be down in the description. I recommend you do so. Once again, thank you so much to everyone who's taken part. If you didn't take part this year, then maybe it will inspire you to join us next year and just make some great games. But that's all for this year's jam, so thank you very much for watching, and goodbye!